Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do the gesture drawing for the pose number 1. So remember yesterday we talked about, well, some of us talked about, not everybody. So the first thing you want to do is you want to find the longest line, it's called. And so the biggest movement the body is making. So when I'm looking at pose number 1, the longest line on this dancer is from the top of his head to the tip of what looks to be on our right side, his right foot. So that's what I draw in first. And I just roughly, I just scribble that in, okay? Then I look for the next longest lines, and I can see, his left arm is making a gesture this way. And then I look for the next one, and I see that his right arm gesturing this way. And then the last gesture is his left leg, and it's coming. Now, is this all in correct proportion? No, but what I just did is I got the movement of the body in, okay? Now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go back in and start laying in some of the landlines, or like the ground points, which are, first we start with the hips and the shoulders. Okay, so I'm gonna come up here and I'm like, okay, what are his shoulders doing? And his shoulders are kind of in a goofier position, but they're pretty diagonal. So they're kind of up here in this diagonal movement. And then I look at his hips, and honestly, his hips are tilted a teeny bit, but not a ton. So I come down here to his hips, okay? And then I like to lay in the direction of the face, and just to kind of give me an idea of the way that the face is headed. And his face is kind of, this isn't the perfect angle, but his face is sort of looking up towards the sky. So I just kind of lay that in. Okay, now I've got I've got my shoulders and my hips in. I've got the movement of the biggest lines of the body. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay in the secondary landmarks, which are like the elbows, the wrists, the knees, the ankles, places where your body bends, your joints, basically. So I come up here to the shoulder, and I'm like, okay, so, I can see that from shoulder to elbow and elbow to wrist, it's pretty straight. And then I can see as we get out here to the wrist, his hand just takes a teeny bit of a dip. Okay. Then I come over here and I can see, okay, from shoulder to elbow, and then elbow to wrist, we're still hanging on to that curve. And then his, hand, and I went off the top of my page. His hand just kind of, okay. And then I just kind of lay in the neck a teeny bit. Notice how it's super scribbly, everyone. Okay, now I'm gonna come down here to the hips. And I'm like, okay, from, hip to knee, and knee to ankle. Okay. And then out here, hip to knee, and then knee to ankle, and then his foot, this is where we have a directional change. His foot is going back into more of a vertical diagonal, okay? All right, again, does this look like a human at this point? No, it does not. This is a gesture drawing. So now what I'm gonna come back in is I'm gonna give him a little a little volume. So I'm gonna go in, and now I'm gonna start to kind of like scribble in some mass. So I come up to the arm, into the body, and I'm same thing, I'm drawing really gestury, and now I'm kind of laying in the mass. He's very muscular, so I'm laying in some thicker mass on the thighs. He's a dancer, so it would make sense that he has larger muscle thighs. I can tell already this is not incorrect. I'm like, ooh, this is not correct proportion, but I'm not worried about that right now. I'm really just worried about just getting the gesture in, and I'm drawing quick and scribbly and free, okay? And I'm just getting the gesture of this dancer in, and I'm not overthinking it, okay? Even though I told you I just was overthinking it when I was like, that's not in correct proportion, but go back and fix it later. And see, I'm just going in and scribbling in some mass, quickly gesturing the whole way. Does this look like the same form that's in our picture? No, but it's got the movement of that form. Okay? The movement, that's what we're looking for today. Okay, all right. That was gesture 1. Okay. Gesture 2 is a little trickier. I'll go this way so that way you can see it. Gesture 2 is a woman who's kind of like bent. She's got some interesting bends going on, which which looks very painful to Miss Hawkins. I would need Advil in order to recover from that movement. She's obviously not in her 40s. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, again, lay in the longest lines of movement. So I first look, I typically always look for the spine. So I look at the spine, and from her tip of her head to the bottom of her tailbone, it's pretty straight. So I'm going to run out of paper here, but just bear with me, guys. So her longest line from her top of her head to her tailbone is pretty straight. She's holding her spine very straight. So then the next thing I look is I look at her legs are creating the longest lines, and she has one leg that's coming out at a diagonal, and then she has another leg that's going up and down. Okay. Next, I look at her arms. Same thing. So those are the next 2 longest lines, and her arms up and over. And this is why I knew I was going to run out of paper. Up and over. You guys have a tendency to draw small. I have a tendency to draw big. So work with me. Okay, so I've got her longest lines in. I've got the movement in. This is what's going on. It's not in correct proportion. I can already tell that some of these things would have to be tightened up later. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in those marks of her hips and her shoulders. So her shoulders are pretty steady across, straight across. And honestly, her hips are just barely tilted because she's keeping her spine pretty still, pretty straight. So our 2 main landlines are pretty horizontal. And then I'm going to go through and find out the secondary landmarks, which are her knee. So, yep, I can see here to her knee, and then her knee to her ankle, and then her foot. And then I come out here, and sorry, guys, I ran out of paper. But here to her knee, and then her other foot would be that way. Okay, I'm coming up to her shoulders, to her elbow, same thing, I ran out of paper again. Shoulders to elbow, and then you would go elbow to wrist, and put her hands are actually moving in. So her arm is at a diagonal, and then her hands are going horizontal. So make sure you put that in. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to I can't really, her face is in profile. So I'm just going to kind of scribble in her head. So I know her face, she's kind of facing away from me. And then I'm going to go in and start adding mass. So I kind of go through here, adding her mass, and I'm still keeping it really gestury. She also has, some nice thigh muscles, so I'm going to lay those in. Those have quite a bit of mass. See how it does not exactly look like her, but I'm laying in the movement. I'm laying in her gesture. I'm getting the essence of what is going on with her body. Okay. Actually, her head should be up here. See, and as I do it, I just scribble over. I'm like, I can tell when something's not in the right spot, and I just scribble over it. No big deal. Okay? There. I have the gesture of her body. Does it look exactly like this human in my picture? No, it doesn't. But I've got her movement in, and that's the point of today. Okay, you're going to try the third one on your own, so I don't take up too much video time on you, but so try the third one on your own. See what you can come up with. The third one has it's a little bit, his pose is a little bit simpler, so I think you can find all the long lines and the land lines and the secondary landmarks. You'll be able to see those pretty easy. Okay, awesome.